All right, thank you so much for coming back. This is Atsushi, and this is the Sashiko Live Streaming on November 6th. Hi, I hope everybody's doing okay. Yeah, in this kind of crazy time. Anyway, I will be doing the Sashiko stitching while I talk about the Sashiko. Now let me start on the Instagram so I can do that on both sides. Just give me a bit. あれ指抜き指抜きがちょっと待ってね。指抜きがない。ないわけがない。今まであったやん。ちょっと待ってね。Sorry. Oh, there we go. Couldn't find my symbol. There we go. Alright, thank you so much for coming back again. This is Atsushi Sashiko Live Streaming in English. Oh, I cannot believe I did just live streaming for hour and a half in Japanese and I'm doing it in English. That's what I do. I don't mind doing Sashiko, but talking for 1 hour and a half was a little bit. It's not even a little bit. It's good. It's all good. Okay. So I am doing this on YouTube and also the Instagram for the archive perspective. The Instagram's comments flow pretty fast, so if you do not find me not answering a question, it's either the questions which has been already answered or that I'm not really I cannot even visualize that. So the YouTube might be better place to ask me a question. Otherwise, I will restart what I was doing. This is the about 2 meter and 1 meter square, like a rectangle shape of the fabric, which is gonna block the wind from my garage to the house. It's like a curtain, but more like a split the partition to block the cold air from the garage. While you work, you can teach us Japanese. Oh, that's a very good point, but I don't I don't know if I'm qualified to teach that because my Japanese is kind of weird too. So it's really big piece. So I have to stitch a lot. And where was I? Okay. Oh my gosh, I should have. I Long time no see. Long time no see. Yes, long time no see. Sorry. This is super heavy, by the way. So this is the denim that I patched together, which has a different story. So I'm gonna tell you that later. But it is very heavy. Like I think the heavier, the thicker the fabric is, the better it's gonna block the air. Right? It gets quite cold where I live. I live in the Pennsylvania, so it gets a little cold. And I want to make sure that it's thick enough for the winter. If we don't have access to Sashiko needles, what can we use? In my opinion, any kind of needle is fine. It's just a matter of experience. For the needles, like I do not really have a specific opinions about needle because any kind of needles will be able to do the Sashiko stitching. But the problem is that the experience, uh, the better needle will give you the better experience. It's gonna reduce your stress of doing the running stitch. If you don't want to make any knots, probably the needle will help you to do that. Like any needles are okay, but I do have a specific recommendation for Sashiko stitching to do Sashiko as I do right now, like this. But it's not like a requirement, or it's not like a rule that you have to follow. It's more like a, you know, there's nothing, there's no needles that you have to get to do Sashiko. It's more like a better equipment. Sashiko thread, on the other hand, has a lot of meaning why we call it, not a meaning, a lot of reason we call it Sashiko thread. So I hope, I mean, you can use Sashiko thread. Like some people say that any thread is fine for Sashiko. I do not agree with that. It is very difficult to achieve what Sashiko does with the non-Sashiko thread. So thread does matter. Needle does matter if you want to be better, if you want to do good job, if you want to do easier, but not really. I mean, I do have a recommendation and specific, how can I, specific, yeah, specific description what is the good needle, but it doesn't really mean that you have to use that. Sorry. Sorry if someone have already asked, but have you ever tried to make a Zentangle, like did oh, Zentangle. I have, I guess. As long as I know, Zentangle is like a like yes. I have not actually, but I have tried something very similar, which is the yin and yang shape. Let me try to find it after this much stitching. But that's probably a very good idea to work on too. It's very good. I just don't know how to draw the Zentangling and also Zentangling, right? Zentangling. My friends actually does it, so let me find the similar things I have done so far. I had some long sharp needle, not specific such one, and that seems to work fine, especially once I got a thimble. Yes, yes. So Sashiko thread makes for such a difference and better experience, although I use Sashiko technique for mending with less visible thread to good effect. Very true. So it is more like a preference, and this needle I use is very like a spoiler. Once I use this needle, I cannot do Sashiko with the other needle. That's how good and how bad it is. Many people get upset to me that how could you introduce this needle? I cannot use other needles I have collected. Ah, you are so good in business, blah blah blah. That's how good this needle is. So the better needle you have, the easier the Sashiko becomes. And thread wise, some people ask me like, how could you make, like, I'm trying to make even stitches, but my stitches doesn't look like yours. That's probably because of the thread, not because of the techniques. Of course, the techniques makes a big difference, but thread is the first things I would say that's probably gonna change how it looks. But again, like I understand that they're, you know, it's not everywhere, it's not available anywhere, everywhere. I'm not gonna say that you're not doing Sashiko by not using the tools I recommend. But I want you to know that anything is okay is kind of a not right statement. There are reasons we use these tools, these supplies. Uh, Again, there's nothing wrong with using what you have. There's nothing wrong with using what you can get in your place. But I want you to learn what is the difference too. I hope it makes sense. After this much thread, let me try to get my. Yeah, I think I have it. The Zentangling kind of thing. It's not Zentangling at all, but it may look like that. Just a second, usual. Okay. Yosha! So this is the denim I'm working on right now. Actually, not that. I'm sorry. I thought that was more like it, but it's all the kind of circle shape, and this is the yin and yang shape from the it's like a light side and dark side from Chinese concept, and I like that concept. So I kind of imitated that and expanded. But in my understanding, Zentangling is like many circles, many like this kind of things. So I think we can do it. It might require a little bit of thinking before we do it. It will require a lot of technique to transfer that. Oh, but if you can draw it by your hand, that's a completely different story. Since I have to transfer that pattern, that's gonna be a little difficult too. But it is probably doable as well too. So this is my pants, which is on hold because I have to make the carton first. The winter is coming. Winter is coming. So this one is here. Where was I stitching? Where was I doing? What was I doing? Oh, what was I doing? Lost in the way. Where was I? What was I doing? Just a second, okay? Here is good. What? Sorry, just a second. あ、これかな？これっぽいな。Winter is coming! So we have to, not we have to, I have to. It's my room is next to the, not right next to, but my room is the closest to the garage door. So I'm the one who get affected. My daughter is sleeping far away from the garage, so she's not gonna suffer, but I will suffer. So there we go. Ah. Just a second. Oh my eyes are not doing good today. Are ya? Ari? Oh. Sometimes I get freaked out if when I don't thread the needle. Okay. I'm getting so hungry. Hungry, not hungry, hungry. So I am not really good at pulling the needle thread. That's something I really have to improve myself. There are a lot of techniques in Sashiko. Yes, there are, but it's most of the technique is not even about making even stitches. The stitches can be even by running, but the other things like how to not to damage the thread when you pull the needles through, how to not to twist those thread, how to not to thin the thread by pulling it. Many Japanese artisans, like old people, say that the longer you take the thread out, it shows that how no The literally translation is the short needles. No, the long thread means you're not good at it, which means the shorter you take the thread for the stitching, the better you are. But I kind of take a long thread, so. But some people take like 3 meters, 4 meters, 5 meters, 10 meters thread. That's still too much, so don't take that long. Just it's too long to walk on. The shorter the better, but sometimes less than a meter is a little too short because you have to keep threading. It's all the balance. Yeah, I have to get better at this, but there we go. Did I bring anything to talk about today? I probably did, but I forgot about it. So I will just stop stitching and read. In Ukraine, there is the same saying, like a girl in a bad manner master if she used a long thread. Oh, that's very interesting. Yes, I think it's really common in hand stitching. I mean, it might be different in your culture, but many culture has the same, similar, not the same, similar messages. And thank you so much for saying that the Ukraine has the same saying. That's really interesting. I mean, sometimes people say that Sashiko is the technique or Boro is the technique of stitching. In fact, it is not. I mean, this kind of stitching existed everywhere in the world. And this pattern existed everywhere in anywhere. This is just called geometric patterns. So technically speaking, there's nothing special about Sashiko Boro, right? I mean, there's nothing special. What makes it so special is that it has some of the stories with Japanese people there, which I share on Instagram or YouTube or my website. So some people ask me like, is it painful? Is it painful to the Japanese people? Or is it culturally inappropriate to call their stitching sashiko when they do not try to understand Japanese culture? Um, to be honest, I really don't mind. But my question is like, why do they have to call sashiko if they don't if they don't really care about the Japanese culture? Again, this kind of stitching existed every single culture in their culture. Like, I believe that your culture has the similar things. It may have a different name. It should have a different name. We also have that saying in Austria, Germany. Wow, it rhymes and it's not nice. It rhymes and not nice. Long thread, lazy girl, lazy girl. There we go. There we go. That's something the Japanese would do too. Would say that too. Why you always let some thread at the end? Uh, that's a very common question. I answered that question already on my website, upcyclestitches.com. Please go to my website and then search the article saying why loop. There's several reasons I leave the loop there. Do you by any chance have the stitched Mihaba Furoshiki with you so you could? No, I don't have it. I'm sorry, I don't have it. I wish I had it. I wish I had it. I really wish. I mean, because of the COVID, all of this shipping from Japan became either super expensive or not available right now. So I was introduced that we are talking about the Mihaba Furoshiki, which is the kind of the Sashiko kit we prepared for just stitching. Like sometimes the transferring the fabric, preparing the fabric is very tiring. So we prepared the stitching the set with the indigo fabric, nice thread, like everything you need to stitch. And I will, once I get it, I will actually stitch over the live streaming so you can get what, you know, we can explain what you can expect. But I do not have the finished sample yet. I will make a finished sample soon when I get that material. The other day we talked about shima as related to sashima. Shame, sorry. Shame as related to Sashiko Boro a little. I was wondering how your family became a Sashiko family given the issue with shame. It is because of the decorative aspect. Um, Sashiko itself doesn't have that much. Well, mm, I so that's a very good question. So first of all, Boro is very much on the shame culture. That's why my family never, never sold any pieces saying Boro something. We enjoyed making like similar to the Boro stuff or to be Boro fabric. However, my family never named their product Boro because it's very shameful for us. Sashiko was more like a necessary process that the Japanese had to do. And at some point, Japanese culture, yes, probably Sashiko was a form of shame as well. But over time, that became more like a decorative stitch. The decorative stitch is more like my family's origin, which is in Hida Takayama. So it's kind of like a venture for that matter. So the old Sashiko in the northern part of Japan, which we call like three biggest Sashiko in Japan, may carry some of the shame still there. But our Sashiko is kind of a newer version in comparison to that. More accurately speaking, I would say that the Sashiko we can see today is a revived version of those histories. So let's say those people who revived it did not really carry the shame as the original Japanese would have felt. Like, I do not feel shameful when I share Sashiko like this. I am saying that the Sashiko or Boro has the shame concept of shame behind it, but I do not feel shame when I introduce Sashiko or Boro because I wasn't there. I know it carries it, but I do not feel shame. So the people who revived Sashiko knew that it was a culture of shame. At the same time, they did not probably feel that. So Sashiko and I keep saying this, but Sashiko and Boros are not the two separate things. Many people think that Sashiko is one technique, Boro is another technique. No, 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 no. Sashiko is a process of doing this kind of stitching, and Boro is the result of this kind of stitching, like ultimate result. If I keep stitching like this over and over and over and over in like 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, this fabric will become Boro. So it's like it's not like Sashiko or Boro, it's Sashiko and then Boro. And Boro itself is very much a shame because they had to do Sashiko that to the extent that they have to. Yeah? Does it make sense? Boro is very shameful because they had to do Sashiko to the extent that it becomes so tattered or broken or damaged. They didn't have enough fabric to renew it. But Sashiko itself was sometimes for the decorative purpose, mainly to make fabric stronger. That's why we have a lot of geometric patterns. So it does not really always carry this shame concept in it. Does it make sense? It's kind of difficult to explain without the script. After all, English is not my first language, but so Sashiko doesn't always carry this shame sense, but Boro is very. I mean, we don't feel shameful by showing the Boro piece because I wasn't there. We didn't go through that. But there are a possibility of somebody who may feel that. So I'll give you one example. When you have a chance to go to Japan after this COVID, you can give the compliment to the people who wear the good Sashiko jacket, like saying that, wow, your Sashiko is great. That's gonna be a good compliment because many people know what Sashiko is. However, please try to not to give them the compliment saying like your Boro is great. If the person is wearing the Boro jacket by choice, that's a good compliment. I believe there's not that many Japanese who has to wear the Boro today, but if they have to wear the Boro and if you compliment them, that's very insulting because they don't have a choice to renew their jacket, but they have to do Sashiko stitching to make it like a Boro like. So by complimenting that it's Boro like, some people who choose to wear the Boro as a fashion, they will be happy. But if you go to like a rural side of Japan wearing like, let's say 90 years old grandma is wearing some Boro-ish kind of things, just, for the safe side, just don't give them a compliment. Because that could be quite insulting. Not insulting, well, quite shaming them. That's the word I think. Not many Japanese feel insulted for that. More like shaming them, and I don't want you to experience that. Sashiko itself is like very like what 500 years old. So in those 500 years, we changed a lot of definition. So there's nothing like one single answer for that, but understanding the process is quite important. The shame was absolutely one part of the like I discovered the value of Boro about 12 years ago. Well, when was that? The Amuse Museum asked us to be part of their Amuse Museum asked us to be part of their collection. My family refused it because they hated Boro. I clearly remember that, and I even went there and apologized to the owner of the museum. I love the Boro and I love the museum. They explain very well about those shameful feeling too. But my family, I clearly remember that they refused the offer. It was a big offer, but they didn't like it. I didn't have it powers back then that much. I appreciate your insight into the culture. It's really helpful those who of us who love the surface of the stitch but don't understand this. Yes, yes. Thank you so much. It is good that people like this, how it looks. But at the same time, I think it's good to know. It doesn't hurt. I'm not saying like all the Japanese. I am not saying that only Japanese should enjoy this practice. Like, anybody can enjoy it. And you don't even have to try to learn the culture behind it. I just want to provide the resources that you can appreciate how the people were thinking about it before. I'm sorry, this fabric is super heavy. Like teasing a person. Yes, probably. Well, not even teasing. Probably denim. I would say like denim might be a good example. I think. So the question is like, is that like talking to them as if the complimenting Boro can be insulting? So it might not be the best example, but let's say that if a young, beautiful person, like it's like 20s, very good masculine body, like shapes, good shape. Let's say like in my mind it's in LA, so it's sorry about my stereotype, but West Coast, sunshine, wearing the completely damaged denim. That's kind of fashion, right? But let's say if you go to somewhere very, very rural, let's say 90 years old, with a lot of like not clean person wearing the denim with a lot of holes, do you think it's a fashion? It could be, but it's kind of scary to tell that your damaged denim is so cool. So that's kind of my understanding of those uh, difficult difficulty of simplifying the culture. It's something which they feel sensitive about. Yes, I mean, simply they didn't have money for that. That's the like not. I don't think any Japanese wanted to make Boro, but they had to. I mean, it happened to be an art, but they didn't want to. I believe if they had a choice to wear kimono, they would have probably wanted to wear that, but they didn't. That's how. I mean, it is beautiful. Trust me, I'm not doubting the beauty of Boro. It's super beautiful. But I mean, I don't know for sure because I wasn't there when I started. It's like 300 years ago. I cannot travel back, but by synchronizing my feeling to them in the Japanese, I think they would have wanted to wear something without mending if they could. So yeah, like what Eva is what Eva said, thank you so much, is kind of like a extreme example. I wouldn't say those people who wear Boro jacket in the rural area of Japan is homeless people, but they may be doing those mending because they do not have enough money. I don't think they exist in today's Japan. It's very unlikely, but that's the dangers of the appreciating Boro. I hope it makes sense. I'm sorry, I'm not explaining well again. English is so difficult. Let me share this feeling every single live streaming. Why English is so difficult? I cannot like this is my what? Wow, this is my almost 10th year. Wow. I came to the Michigan to study. I went back to Japan after graduation and I moved to here in 2014. So this is actually the 10th year in the US. Wow. Still, English is so difficult. Who made that? I mean, Japanese is difficult as well, but still, English is. Ah, yeah. Sorry. It sounds like is about having sensitive to people feeling in their story. Yeah. Yes. So that's all I'm asking. Like majority decision is very good. Like when we have to decide who lead the country, the majority decision is very important. You know, otherwise it's gonna be chaotic. we cannot have two different people for the one. I mean, we cannot have two captains in one boat. So the majority decision is very important in many cases. But when we talk about appreciating the culture or leaving the culture or passing down the culture to the next generation, we, what we have to focus on is not even majority or even silent majority. It's like a silent minority. That's what we have to listen to. I wrote it like a few days ago, but I still clearly remember that when I started stitching Sashiko on the denim, some artist told me that that's not Sashiko. I still remember. I fought back. But that's how, they felt. They felt that was more like insulted, I would say. So Sashiko became something very, very different over last 400 years. And that's what Japanese did. So some people now are proud of sharing Sashiko too. So Sashiko was probably a practice of shame at some point in the Japanese history, but it became more like a practice of appreciation, practice of pride. But at the same time, ignoring the concept, ignoring the feeling of shame behind Sashiko, and especially Boro, is quite dangerous. I hope that makes sense. uh, Sorry, I'm talking too much. Just a little break. Oh yeah, the this everybody really find that's how many people think there's a rule and not rules in Sashiko. So there's a reason that I leave these loops, and the answer is on my website, upcyclestitches.com, and then just type the word Y loop. You'll get answer. And the quickest answer I can think of is like I don't trust myself. You don't have to leave this loop, but just in case. Yes, it is absolutely, Sashiko was absolutely a practice of necessity. It could go back like 1,000 years, I would believe. Like I'm reading a book about before cotton in in Japanese right now. Probably even before cotton, the similar practice was there. So the difference seems that the richer person has the choice between worn out clothes and something brand new, whereas someone less to yes. Thank you. Thank you for summarizing that. That's today's choice, right? In the back in Edo period, I don't think the rich people chose to wear something like boro. I mean, they wore kimono for that, so they were classes. No, how do you say that? Class hierarchy class in Japan too. The shogun, lord, daimyo. I cannot translate it into English, but there were hierarchy, and each class had a requirement for what to wear. So the peasant couldn't wear kimono not only because they don't have money, but they just couldn't. It was rude. So I mean, at some point of Edo period, I'm not generalizing all 400 years. It's impossible to generalize 400 years. Feudal hierarchy. Thank you. That's probably it. So there are many, 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 many reasons that I do. So I hope you can learn that as well on top of the. That's something I keep asking. Like, so many people worry about the stitches size, how even the stitches are, how beautiful Sashiko stitching is. Sure, go ahead, but I really don't. Some people say that you have to open the center, you have to do that. Don't do that, do that, follow the rule. Your stitching is not good because you're not following the rule. Blah 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 blah. Good for you. I don't. Like I hope of course I want to try to get better. I hope you practice, but no rules. I mean, come on. Think about it. Think about those kind of stories. If this stitching is a practice out of poverty for necessity, it is the practice for necessity, which means that there are somebody in your family who is wanting this fabric to cover, protect them from the cold. Like as if I am making this curtain to block the air from outside, I have a choice to turn on the heater, right? I can turn on the heater. I have a heater. They didn't. I mean, I can go to Walmart tomorrow and get the fabric if I have to. They didn't. They didn't have Walmart. They didn't have Target. So they had to stitch. Their daughter might be freezing next to them because of what they don't have. Do you think they cared about each stitches? I don't think so. I mean, of course, they wanted to make it beautiful. This is a. It's, of course, they wanted to make it beautiful. That's why they cared about patterns. They cared about things. But that's not the principle. How it looks is not really the principle in Sashiko. It is very good to have a good looking, but that's not it. It. It's good to have it, but that's not it. Oh, so many comments. Thank you. Oh my god, I'm not following on the on the YouTube. I told everybody the YouTube is easier to pick up the comments, but sorry. So many classes, so many culture had the classes, and the who may wear what's rules. Now there's a bit more freedom, although when the queens of yes, when the Queen of Netherlands husband threw off his tie, it still made waves. So what we wear made us human. Hmm? That's how I respect the clothes. Like the textile or even cloth makes us human. The choice, the freedom, the class, the representation. That's why it is very important for me to represent, not represent, introduce what Sashiko is, what Boro was for us, so that we will not change the culture more than necessary. The culture should change over time. I'm not gonna deny that. Just not more than necessary. That's the key. So yeah, if there was a comment about in the on the YouTube about rules of Sashiko. She said that it is. I think the rule of Sashiko are make the fabric better, and you can decide what those words you mean yourself. Um, for me, Sashiko is the practice of appreciating the fabric, which is appreciating what we have. So we do not have to get something new to identify ourselves. We can kind of add some cares into the fabric so we can make it, we can express ourselves. Um, that's kind of how I enjoy Sashiko. Like not define, but more like how I enjoy Sashiko. So that's why I keep saying there's no rules. If you appreciate your fabric, you know, that's what I only ask. If I am not mistaken, there is a kind of blanket that exists out of the same necessary for warmth that originating from India. Yes, there are. I think we call it Kanta. The Kanta might be the practice name. Um, this please do not misunderstand. I I, I am not claiming this culture as the only one technique in the world. In fact, this kind of things happen millions of places in the world. In fact, there are probably 10,000s of places that, even within Japan, there are 10,000s of places, 10,000, like millions of families practicing that. So, from that perspective, there are a million types of answers for that. What I'm saying is that since that was so personal, we probably should hear everybody's voice. And India has the similar stitching culture, probably mm, anywhere in the world. Little bit differently because of the people behind it. We call it culture, but and that Japanese culture makes this stitching practice as sashiko. So I am not claiming this is unique, and I'm not saying this is only Japanese stuff, but this stitching happened in Japan with a lot of Japanese culture, and that's why I'm calling it sashiko and I'm sharing that. And I want you to do the same. But I probably like you probably your grandma was doing the same thing. Your grandma's grandma were probably doing the same thing. We, if human, we decide to give up. We decide to discontinue those things because they don't have to. Many Japanese decided to discontinue doing sashiko in the history. That's why there's no documents left. Some people, including my family, decided to revive those sashiko out of the histories or voice. That's the sashiko we can see today. But 400 years ago, 90% of the Japanese population were probably doing exactly the same thing as I am doing right now. Who knows? But what we know is that it existed. I hope it makes sense. Since we are living through a global environment, reckoning, I think it is changing how many cultures feel about the virtue of repainting instead of throwing away. Repairing, I think it is changing how many cultures feel about. I am really happy with this like visible mending trend or like repairing upcycling trend. I'm happy with it. Just I don't want Sashiko or Boro to be different more than necessary. Like for example, Boro is not word for the visible mending. This is something I really have to say. Boro is not the word for the visible mending. They did not want to make it visible. I mean, if they had to stitch full survival, they wanted to hide it. If there is a front and back of the Boro piece, the more patchwork that you can see, the more colorful they are, more mosaic like it is. It's probably the back side of the Boro piece. They didn't want to do that. So I'm sorry. I'm gonna stitch a little bit, okay? There's so many comments. I like. I really appreciate it. I just want a little bit like stitch today now. Sorry. I wish I can read and stitch together, but hey, thank you. And it's about 12. Well, I have 10 more minutes or so in here and there. Just a second. So this is my kind of like I wrote it on my Instagram post, but I hope you can bring your stitching project. It doesn't have to be Sashiko, of course. Any project is fine, but this is something I can do. I can contribute to the world. Stitching while talking is fun. Stitching while listening is very fun as well. So, it's a kind of peaceful moment. As much as I am talking, I'm trying to defend, or I'm talking on behalf of Japanese culture, it is very peaceful moment. I cannot be super upset while stitching. I don't know why, but I can't. So it would be great if we can just stitch together over the, live streaming. When you get used to Sashiko stitching, especially the one I teach online, as you can see, you can stitch while talking. You can stitch even without looking your fingers. Like I can read the screen and stitch together if I have to. So that's what I teach. That's what I share too. And try to not to focus on how perfect your stitches or how not perfect your stitches are. Sometimes people say that the Sashiko is celebrating non-perfectionism, imperfection. That's why it's wabi-sabi. There's a lot of wrong information there. Sashiko is not a practice to appreciate imperfection. They all want it to be better. So please do not misunderstand that. They did not celebrate imperfection. However, as long as we do Sashiko stitching with hand in the rhythm, it will never be perfect. That's the result oriented. But I know no single artisans who were happy with the imperfect result. So please celebrate your imperfection after practicing as much as you can. And that's I think that's one respect to the culture too. Yeah. Yep, that's therapy for our soul. It's so weird though. I like stitching, and it has something in it. Like if I can, I want to summarize how I am feeling right now. But this stitching connect us to the memories. If I don't know, this might be a dangerous topic to just jump in to explain because I don't know if I can. But like I feel like Sashiko itself, or even like any kind of hand stitching, for me, Sashiko is very related to my culture. By doing Sashiko, I can connect myself to the past, which is probably my memories. And it's like a snuggling a family for that. I mean, I didn't have the best father, but sometimes, he's my father after all. So Sashiko remind me a lot of about him. And that's kind of the time we do not have anymore in this super efficient world. We Google everything. We ask Alexa to play the music. We even ask our memory to Alexa. Like, what was I doing yesterday, Alexa? Like, what the? I'm not judging those people because I'm one of those. Oh, wabi-sabi is very, very, very dangerous word, so be careful with it. I mean, I'm not judging you. I'm sorry. I'm just asking you to be careful with the word wabi-sabi. Many people are misunderstanding the word wabi-sabi. It is it's not the word for celebrating imperfectionism. It is part of it. Wabi-sabi has the kind of element to appreciate the imperfection. That's very much true, but it's not equal. Some people say that wabi-sabi is about celebrating imperfection. That's 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 only probably 1% of the whole picture. So just be careful. I mean, the more you understand what wabi-sabi is, the more you know that it cannot be described by word. I know one author who wrote about wabi-sabi, and she started the book saying, "I know I cannot describe wabi-sabi's whole picture by writing a book, but let me try." And that's probably the best way to describe what wabi-sabi is, to start as a book. I still don't have a word, and I don't think I can explain that. But that's another teaching by Zen practice tell you that the word doesn't describe the whole picture. Only practice can do it. And I remember that too. So, I mean, wabi sabi as the imperfection, appreciating imperfection is not wrong at all. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just a part of it. And in fact, they do not celebrate that. They appreciate it. English is so difficult. I hope I'm explaining well. 日本語はとても日本語は難しくない。I'm not saying that Japanese is difficult. The Japanese is not that difficult, but the biggest difference between English and Japanese is that Japanese expect others to read between lines. I probably explained that before, but Japanese sometimes don't need a subject or even the object. So I go to, like, do we go to, let's say, do we go to shopping, right? Do we go to shopping? Asking my wife, let's say. In Japanese, I can omit do we and shopping, go to shopping. And I'm sorry, do we and shopping. I can simply ask iku, wanna go, like go, and then we kind of expect that we are in the same situation. That's how effed up it is. So we have a lot of expectation. We have to read between the lines when we communicate in Japanese. So a lot of explanation in Japanese are missing a lot of information. And English, on the other hand, we have to be very, very specific when we talk. Who does what? You know, otherwise, that's very much confusing. I think that's because English was developed to communicate among different kind of people from different background. Japanese is only for the Japanese people, which has a lot of things in common before they communicate. So it is very difficult. It's very difficult to, and I didn't know it until I actually learned English, how to speak English. But because of this difference, some of the Japanese explanation are missing a lot of things that has to be verbalized before sharing. Somebody said that the wabi-sabi is imperfection. That's probably some Japanese translated. But that is really much losing a lot of in between things. Okay. Okay, it's about time. Oh, 1 hour. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry I'm not kind of reading all the comments. I thank you so much for the books. I will write it down. I will try to check that the old comments should be left in the YouTube, but I will just double check. I think it's gonna be there too. The Fabric of Civilization: How Textile Made the World by Virginia Pastrell. That's one book recommended. And also the book called Slow Stitch. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for the live streaming. Okay. I'm sorry that couldn't. Thank you so much for the great conversation. I will come back next Friday again, and I will keep stitching. Have a good weekend. Thank you so much. And bye bye. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm gonna just stop on the YouTube soon, but let me just finish it here with the Instagram. Oh, I talked a lot. I'm sorry that I couldn't pick up all the comments. I kind of promised that I would in. That was a little. I have to be able to read English and then stitch too. I can do it in Japanese, but still, English is my second language, I guess. Just a second. I am finishing up the Instagram. Sashiko Live Streaming. Okay. I believe that I share a lot of information on my YouTube on this account, and especially the Sashiko stories has a lot of summary, like what is the difference between Sashiko and Boro, what is the reason I keep using the Sashiko thread, and there are many reasons that I keep doing this live streaming. And live streaming is more like a time for me to rephrase it with actual stitching. So please follow the live. Please follow me on the Instagram or YouTube. Please keep coming back. I really appreciate the conversation. I really appreciate learning from you. I'm not saying my understanding is the ultimate answer or correct answer. I'm just saying that the voice, silent voice, the previous silent voice exists, and I want to just represent that. All right, thank you so much, and have a nice weekend. Bye bye. Bye bye.